Tuesday morning. A new book is defending the super rich. New York Magazine. Well, actually, it's New York Magazine, the New York Times Magazine.
New York Times.
That's the magazine I remember, but we didn't get it right there. But the New York Times Magazine profiling the author, Ed Conard, over the weekend. Conard wrote the book Unintended Consequences, Why Everything You've Been Told About Economy is Wrong. The author joins us now. He's also, should say this, a former partner at Bain Capital, where he worked side by side with Republican presidential candidate Mitt Romney. And it's great to have you here. I did read the piece. You do have an excellent new book, and it does defend the 1%. Make your case, sir.
I have the 0.1%.
0.1%.
The book doesn't really defend anything. It's a prescription for how to get the economy to grow faster. And one of the prescriptions of the book is that we have to reward risk-taking, that in the long run, innovation is really what drives the economy. It's driven the U.S. economy. It hasn't driven Europe's economy or Japan's economy, and we see the effect of that. I make the argument that that's good for the middle class and the working poor, but it's been far more beneficial here than in Europe and Japan. But it's one aspect of a
So make this case or respond to this. You hear so often, whether it's economists like Joe Stiglitz or Paul Krugman, that inequality is actually the problem, that we actually have not raised or for all of the things that we've raised in terms of our economy, it's still the inequality unto itself has been a failure. You disagree with that?
Sure. I think, tell me why it is not good for our economy or the middle class to have our talented workers in the United States significantly more productive than Europe's and Japan's. I don't understand the argument. I think they can't make that argument, so they have to make another argument, which is we'll have too much political power and we'll use that against the middle class. It seems to me that we gained political power in the 1980s and 90s a little bit from where we were, and that we've used that very successfully to grow the U.S. economy faster than Europe and
What do you
Japan.
make of the arguments about upward mobility, that it's harder to move up today than it used to be? Not that you can't be Steve Jobs today or Mark Zuckerberg today, but that the average American can't move up the ladder as fast as he could or should or could have, say, 30, 40 years ago.
Sure. There's a lot of people who hadn't been educated 30, 40 years ago, so education really opened up enormous opportunities for everyone, and I think you saw a reshuffling of society and the economy. Today, I think most of the people who want education can get access to education. So I think you're going to find over time, as education grows more efficient, you'll see it being perhaps harder and harder to move up and down in the wage scale.
Okay, let's go through some of the other prescriptions. If you were to rank them 1, 2, and 3, what we need to do.
Sure.
Fix this country.
There's two short-run prescriptions and one long-run prescription. One of the short-run prescriptions is if we keep attacking the banks, we're going to have a decade of lousy growth, and that we need to put that money back to work, and that when we threaten the banks, that money sits on the sidelines. And we get a lot of
when you say attack the banks, you mean the Federal Reserve attacking the banks, the public attacking the banks, Congress attacking the banks? What?
I believe that a lot of the problem, well, in 1929 and in 1990s in Japan, they had a bank of pretty much the same situation that we have today, and that they suffered 10 years of slow growth and high unemployment as a result. Not Japan, they suffer low productivity. And I believe it stems from a misdiagnosis of the financial crisis, which is that there was a run on the banks. If you look at securitization,
it's gotten a bad name.
Investors were putting up homeowner down payments, even though people have the belief that the banks were making reckless, no money down loans. And that from a bank's perspective, they looked and said, whether a 20% homeowner down payment protects me, or outside investors' 20% subordinated investment protects me, either way I'm protected from a 20% drop in real estate prices. We had a 30% drop in real estate prices, and all the institutional money came flooding out of the bank. We now woke up today and recognized there's a lot of withdrawal risk, a lot more risk than we recognized in 2007. And until we take steps to fix that, we will have slow growth and high unemployment.
And when I was reading your magazine article, I mean, you were advocating creating a government program that guarantees to bail out the banks if they ever do face another run, which I thought was kind of like, in the current climate of Occupy Wall Street, et cetera, was quite of a controversial thing to say. And don't you also feel that creates moral hazard? It says to the banks, guys, do what you want because your government supports you.
Yeah, it certainly does create moral hazard. I agree with that. The New York Times puts a particular spin on it. What I say is the government's already making implicit guarantees. We saw those guarantees be made explicit in the financial crisis. We can pretend that the government's not making guarantees, or we can step up to the fact that they in fact are, and we can start charging the banks for the guarantee that we make. If we make those guarantees, we're going to have more moral hazard. But let's not kid ourselves. We're making implicit guarantees, and we already have moral hazard. So the book does have a prescription for how to deal with moral hazard. One of those is that we need to charge the banks for the guarantees that we're making. The second is that we have to increase visibility. If you want to be Goldman Sachs, we got to understand what risk you're taking, and we have to sell some of that insurance to the public so that we can get a public price for what the cost of that insurance is. And we also need to increase capital adequacy so that we better separate withdrawal risk from default risk, because the banks had better suffer every nickel of losses on their loans. What we don't want to do is to take responsibility for withdrawals, because if we do that, we're going to have 10 years of high unemployment and slow growth.
You're for lower taxes across the board, even for the wealthy.
I would say this. We're at, what, 15% of GDP in taxes, and we're spending 25. I don't see how we're lowering taxes from here. What I would say is that reducing government spending is a lot better than significantly raising the taxes as a way to close the gap, because we all know where those tax increases are going to come from.
Right.
They're going to come from successful risk takers, and that's going to dampen down risk taking, and it's going to reduce the accumulation of equity. And we are really underwriting risk in this economy, and that's equity. So if you want high growth, that's not the place I would go. And I make the argument in the book that cutting government expenditures is better for the middle class than raising taxes on successful risk takers.
Will you ever get used to a question of, you defend the 1%. Make your case. I mean, will you ever get over that red herring? I mean, that's the way it's going to be from here on out. I mean, it's incredible to me, though, that
I see how the
most successful people in the I don't know why Occupy Wall Street hates you. I don't. They don't know you. They hate the person they don't know. You know what I mean? Right?
Perhaps.
You're misunderstood.
But you're right, Joe. That's going to be your label.
That's going to be your label. And
in the future, in 20 years' time, who's going to say, "Oh, you're the guy who defended the 1%."
Hopefully, we'll all be down in the 99% by then. Is my hope that there will be no more 1%ers. Which we've tried before to not great success.
Sure.
But hopefully we get. And the other thing is, you're a partner with Romney. You know, there is a target on your back this big with the mainstream media right now. No one's going to accept your book as a partner of Mitt Romney, right?
The book does make the argument that talented people have a moral responsibility to take risks.
We have Arthur Brooks on for 2 hours, and it's going to fall on deaf ears, but he will make the case for the moral case for it. Not the prosperity case for capitalism, but the moral case for capitalism. Because it's a way that you, what our forefathers said, the pursuit of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, that's what you do through capitalism. That's the only system that allows you to do it.
Sure.
That's why it's the most moral system.
I always think it's funny because everyone wants to make the argument.
I'm laughing every day, but it is. It's hilarious.
Everyone wants to make the argument that innovation and success doesn't drive our economy. We see it over the last 200 years.
It's not working, sitting there receiving government handouts that actually drives our economy. That's the best way.
The book, Unintended